Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 121. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us for this Tuesday edition of the show. Apologize, it's out later than usual with the slew of press conferences and first day of mandatory minicamp for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dave and I wanted to wait until after all the news of the day so we could talk about and recap what happened on Tuesday. Dave, how you doing?
Doing good. I'm tired already. Busy day so far. We got a lot to cover, don't we?
We do. Well, Tomlin says you got to be in the best shape of your life over there, Dave. So
that's not me. That's not me.
All right, Dave. Again, as you said, we have a ton to talk about today. We've heard from multiple players and coaches, etc. Again, day one of mandatory minicamp today. Who do you want to start with, Dave? Should we start with Mike Tomlin since he was the man of the hour this afternoon?
Yeah, let's start there and kind of recap what things we think may have happened that Tomlin really wouldn't say, give us a lot of information there, but a little bit of injury news maybe to discuss here.
Yeah, I had to run an errand during Tomlin's presser, so you might know this better than I do, but apparently some reports that Ben and Juju did not finish practice today. Now, Tomlin after practice said that, quote, none concerning, none whatsoever when asked about the seriousness of those potential injuries, and that he did not go into any detail about the specific nature of any guy or anything like that. So very vague because there is no obligation to provide any sort of concrete injury report this time of year in the spring. So that's the report. I wouldn't be too worried about it. Who knows if those guys will practice tomorrow, rest of the week, but probably very minor stuff.
Yeah, a little context, and obviously Alex and I, neither of us were there at the practice, but judging by the line of questioning that Mike Tomlin received near the early portion of his post-practice press conference there, something of some description, as they like to say, may or may not have happened. We got to be careful how we word this because we don't know for sure. May or may not have happened to Ben Roethlisberger during the 2-minute portion of practice, and something may or may not have happened to Juju Smith-Schuster that forced him from the field. Mike Tomlin would not really, none concerning, none whatsoever when asked about injuries. I don't talk injury in great detail this time of year. I'm not required to do so, but rest assured, if I thought something was significant, I would address it with you guys. He was then asked, can you walk us through what happened with Ben Roethlisberger and maybe what potentially happened to him during the 2-minute drill? He says, I won't. He was then that was then followed up with, we saw Juju Smith-Schuster leave the field. Are we to assume that it is nothing significant as well? Tomlin says, yes, you are. He was then asked, can we expect to see Ben Roethlisberger or Juju Smith-Schuster back on the field this week or Wednesday? He says you can expect whatever you wish. We'll see what tomorrow holds. And really, that's about the long and short of it. He was asked about David DeCastro not working, and basically, I guess, in so many words, pawn that off as a day-to-day kind of day-to-day type injury. He's not required to comment on that. So that's where we're at. We know exactly what we just told everybody there. We'll just wait and see what happens on Wednesday. See if Roethlisberger or Smith-Schuster works. And we'll see what happens with David DeCastro. I think the other piece of information that we got was 89 of 90 players were present, at least at mandatory at Tuesday's minicamp practice there. Stephon Tuitt was the lone player absent, and obviously he's going through that recent tragedy that family went through, and Mike Tomlin sent out his support and condolences to it and his family as well.
Right, yeah, but all other 89 players were there. I know we heard from Mike Sullivan today, but it sounds like more we're talking hockey injuries than it is football injuries over there, because just not a lot of details, but I wouldn't expect Tomlin to divulge such information right now. Tomlin also was asked about the Steelers' vaccination status, kind of a hot button issue in the last week or two in the NFL, with reportedly about half of the players. I forget what the report or who the reporter was, but about half players have received at least one shot of the COVID vaccine. But Tomlin says he doesn't have an exact percentage on where the Steelers are at, but says he believes they are near the tops of the league. So I think once you hit, I believe, 85%, you'll be able to basically function as normal pre-pandemic in terms of meetings and interaction and those types of things. So Steelers seem to be trending in that direction.
That's a positive there for sure.
Yep. And anything else from Mike Tomlin talked about in terms of players? He didn't talk about too many guys in particular, but I think had some notable comments on cornerback James Pierre, the sophomore undrafted free agent last season, who could really have an expanded role in 2021 with the release of Steven Nelson. A big opportunity there for somebody, whether it's Pierre or Justin Lane or someone else to potentially step up and play those right corner snaps in the Steelers sub-package in their nickel and dime defense. As the subject of your terrible take, Dave, you talked about what Tomlin's comments were about Pierre using a special teams play last year as hopefully a springboard in the defensive play this year.
Yeah, I don't know how to frame that. I really didn't know how to frame that properly in my terrible take. I think you listened to it. Hopefully I did a good job there. I mean, it's definitely a positive. He says, I saw consistent gunner play, and oftentimes when you have that level of consistency and performance in a special teams area, it's often an indication of advancement of maturity and growth opportunity in other phases as well. He says he thinks over the course of time, of his time there with the Steelers, the young guys that are consistent and perform in that area usually ascend within the offensive or defensive unit, and so it's reasonable to expect him to do that. He goes on to say he got a lot of in-game experience last year, although most of it obviously was with was in the special teams area. He thinks that field time and game speed exposure will help the growth and development of Pierre. He says, I think it's reasonable to expect him to utilize that experience as a catalyst for growth on defense. So I mean, I don't know how you frame that other than a positive there. What does it mean moving forward? All we can do is kind of speculate. And look, I mean, this team has snaps to fill when it comes to the Mike Hilton, signing with the Cincinnati Bengals during the offseason there. Well, obviously, Cameron Sutton probably going to be the guy to play outside, at least in base packages. What's going to happen in sub package? That's the $1 million question right now. I don't know a for sure answer to that. I mean, look, you got Shakur Brown. There's a lot of hype about him right now, but he is a rookie. After all, could we have Arthur Millette play a role in there? Might we see a scenario where maybe James Pierre comes in on the outside and maybe Cameron Sutton ducks back down into the inside? I think that's at least plausible, you know. Look, I mean, the biggest takeaway here is it seems that Mike Tomlin has a good feeling about where James Pierre is right now, following OTAs and going into in the minicamp. We'll just have to see where it goes from there. I mean, obviously a guy like Justin Lane could potentially be in the mix, but it seems to be, and stemming really back from late last season, it seems to be more, and you and I have been kind of on this, saying it certainly seemed like Pierre had jumped Justin Lane for all practical purposes there at the end of the season. So I'll let you take it from there. What can we read into what Tomlin said about Pierre, and is it indeed plausible that Pierre might be a guy to come in on the outside in sub packages?
Yeah, to your second question, I think it's certainly plausible. It may be the more likely or most likely scenario right now where one of Pierre or Lane, takes hold of that right corner spot that'll kick Sutton to the slot in nickel and in dime. But I don't think anything's set in stone right now. Those things will be determined based on the play of those young and new guys come training camp and come the preseason. I think it could go, in terms of guys who are on the roster, I think it goes one of two ways. Either Pierre or Lane or somebody really does well at that right corner spot, that outside corner spot, and that'll kick Sutton to the slot, or they fail to do so, and so Sutton will stay on the outside, and Arthur Millette will play in the slot, where he played quite a bit in his NFL career and kind of moved to free safety last year, but played slot before moving to free safety was a Jet. So I think it kind of goes in one of those two ways. And for Pierre, I mean, obviously just because you played well on special teams doesn't mean that you're going to be guaranteed defensive success, but I think it is a good springboard into that sophomore year. And just whenever you're dressing and you're playing and you're active and you're engaged and those kind of things, I think it's put you in a better position to succeed your sophomore year than had you been a game day weekly inactive who barely or didn't play at all your first year. So I think it's going to at least give them some sort of that in-helmet perspective of being ready and prepared to try to meet the moment.
Right. So we'll, obviously we'll see what, once you get to training, or hopefully get to training camp there, you'll probably be able to shed a lot more light on that, hopefully moving forward there. So, not that it's a huge surprise that James Pierre might be a guy to watch here as we get closer to training camp, but I think Tomlin, in so many words, kind of confirmed that on Tuesday.
Yeah, and I would just caution right now, I think you can learn a little bit more from this 3-day minicamp, but they're still not in pads. It's still learning phase. So that's what Tomlin talked about. It's about learning, teaching, those kind of things, get to know you type stuff. So it's still hard to really make any evaluations based off of certainly what's happened in OTAs, because that was 7-on-7s. There was not even any team drills, so it's almost impossible to make those evaluations. But even now, I think it's pretty tough to do. And once you get into camp and the pads come on, then you can start making some better competitive, I think, talent evaluations.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that was from Mike Tomlin. Steelers also had both their coordinators speak today with Matt Canada and Keith Butler. Matt Canada kind of taking some of the headlines today with some of the comments about the Steelers offense in 2021, especially talking about his work with Ben and how this offense will run with him and Big Ben. In the headline comment here that probably certainly deserves some level of context to it, but the big banner headline here is, quote, "We're going to do what Ben wants to do." So that is the sentence that's gaining all the traction today.
Nobody panic. Go ahead and panic. No, in all seriousness, that will be what everybody runs with, I think.
And to be fair, that was our headline. Now, we provided the context of the full quote, but, just in full disclosure.
Right. How do you interpret all that was said there?
Probably less significantly than what most other outlets will interpret it. If you read the full quote of what he's saying here, and I'll read part of it here, you can read the whole comment on Steelers Depot. He says, quote, this is Canada talking, "Matchups are how you win football games. Ben starts with the quarterback. What does he do? What does he like? What does he see? What is good to his eye in the passing game? And we build off of that." So it's all about putting guys in positions to succeed. Starts with your quarterback. If your quarterback's not comfortable, then your offense is probably not going to be, certainly will not be the best version of itself. And so we know that Matt Canada can't run his ideal offense of being under center all the time and play action boots and rollouts and all that kind of stuff. We know that. So I think it's not that earth-shattering. And, of course, the OC quarterback relationship is paramount. Those two guys have to be in sync and working together and doing things that your quarterback is able to do and playing to his strengths and things like that. So the headline is pretty, eye-popping and eye-catching. But I think when you read the full context and quote of what Canada says, it makes a lot of sense.
Right. Look, and we've talked about this several times. A good offensive coordinator doesn't try to put the square pegs in the round holes.
Right. Any coach, any position.
Right.
That's your job.
Right. You try to best utilize the personnel that you have and bring out the best form an offensive scheme around your personnel and the talents that those players have. Plain and simple. Now, are there a lot of things that's why I caution everybody to go. There are some things obviously you can learn from Matt Canada's past, and you've done a great job over the course of a year and a half now of highlighting the motions and the shifts and things like that. We saw some of that last year. It did look clunky at times. I think they'll work a lot. In short, there's not going to be, I don't think, drastic, huge changes in this offense. What we might see it, and I think you've used the word before too, build upon what you already have there. Now, was a lot of stuff, how much was ripped out, how much stays in there? I think a lot of that does depend on kind of what Ben likes to do there. Will we see, Ben under center more? Will we see more play action to kind of hear what Matt Canada said? Ben can still do all of that. The under the center, the play action, that kind of stuff. I kind of get the sense that we will see, more than what we've seen in the past would be how many plays, that kind of stuff. I think we will kind of see that stuff. How much pistol will we see? That's been a hot topic that you've written about, I think, a couple of times since last season ended there. It's another takeaway, I think, from what Matt Canada said, and this kind of stacks on to Juju wanting to play more on the. He kind of had a grin when he was prepping for that question to be asked, about Juju saying like to play outside more. I thought he handled it real well. Look, Juju just wants to win. We have guys that should be able to move around. I think you will, and I think they should. I think they should move those receivers around a little bit more in 2021. I still think, and I think Canada knows in his heart of hearts as well too, that Juju's best position is in the slot. Now, will he be targeted 80 whatever percent of the time in the slot like he was last year? Hopefully that number goes down. But if it doesn't, hopefully Juju, when he does work out a slot, is targeted down the field more than 5 yards on average. And I did a breakdown of the slot receptions from 2020 on SteelersDepot.com yesterday, and as you see, you have guys like Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool had a fair amount of receptions, I guess. Obviously nowhere close to what Juju had out of the slot, but those guys can function in the slot. Obviously, Deontay Johnson's best suited to play backside X, and probably Chase Claypool best suited to play the Z, and same with James Washington. But all those guys should be a little bit more interchangeable, or hopefully will be interchangeable a little bit more, and allow Matt Canada move those guys around a little bit more. So back to, I guess, the original statement here. How different? We're still going to see inside zone. We'll probably, maybe we'll see a little bit more outside zone here. He talked about the mandate, which wasn't surprising from Rooney, that they have to run the ball better. And, I think he cautioned, saying it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to run it 1,000 times a game, but when we do run, we better run the ball well, and we better be able to utilize play action off of that. All the things that you, I, and probably everybody listening to this podcast knew had to happen or has to happen in 2021 for this offense to be successful.
Right, not breaking any new ground there. I think and I said this as soon as the Canada hire promotion was announced. We're going to see more play action. We're going to see more under center. We're going to, Canada's going to have a stamp on this offense. I think he has to. Otherwise, it's not, giving him the best opportunity to run his offense. But what will be that balance between what Canada wants, what Ben does well, and the compromise you can find in between, that middle ground that you're always trying to work at, especially as a new OC and a team that's not rebuilding, at least this year, that doesn't have a bunch of new pieces that were handpicked by your OC. It's in a lot of ways the same. In a lot of ways it's different, but in the core ways it's the same guys as last year, including your Hall of Fame quarterback. So how that compromise gets struck and how quickly they can strike it and figure this stuff out early in the season, that's going to be, I think, the big thing to watch between the Canada-Ben dynamic.
Right, and he's asked about the bell cow running back philosophy, and look, we all have a feeling we know how this is going to go with the distribution and all like that. But he made sure to kind of leave himself a little open room about how about how the fall of the distribution is yet to be determined yet, and how running backs coach Eddie Faulkner has done a good job with that entire group. And he talked a lot, some about obviously the terminology being a little bit different, and how Roethlisberger's done a good job. Really, all quarterbacks have done a good job of accepting that, and how the offensive line, making strides with Clem and Coach Morgan. What did we? He says that doesn't mean that we're going to run the ball a million times or anything like that. But giving them an opportunity to be more aggressive, them being the offensive line, I think is going to go. So that's another thing that we've heard. Aggressiveness, physical, attack. I mean, these guys are going to be looking to run it. Make no mistake about it. This team's going to be looking to run the football. Probably early in games and establish that run and then try to build off of what they do in the running game from there, potentially maybe using, hopefully Najee Harris or Anthony McFarland out of backfield, those kind of things.
Yeah, I think, again, no surprises there. This offensive line needs to be more physical. They're going to play better at the point of attack, and you got to get better push up front, and that'll improve your run game, hopefully by leaps and bounds. You cannot have the 32nd ranked rushing attack again and not only be last, but clearly dead last, where it's a wide gap between you and the team in 31st place. So that's the mission. Art Rooney made that clear, but if you watch any Steelers football last year, I mean, you knew that was obvious and had to be fixed. And will it be? I mean, we'll see. It's hard to be any worse, but we'll see exactly how good it gets. What'd
you make of his tempo comments?
Yeah, what'd he say? That he likes to mix up tempo and vary tempo and says that Ben's very good at it and things like that. I mean, I think every OC likes to do that. I don't know if any OC likes to stay at one tempo, one pace. I think you want to keep a defense off balance. You get the right personnel grouping or the wrong personnel grouping for a defense on the field. You want to then go maybe tempo to exploit that and things like that. But I mean, it just sounds like a college coach. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that, he's talking about motion and matchups and tempo and things like that. It sounds like a college coach that sometimes doesn't have the talent advantage, so he has to create the edge in other ways with scheme, with matchups, with tempo, with motion and leverage in space and things like that. So it's very much that college philosophy, I think, being applied to the NFL.
What did you think about the comments on Derek White? Really didn't shed a lot of information there overall. Just, basically we'll use them when we think we have to use them.
Mm-hmm. You think we'll see? I know it'll be largely circumstantial based on, if you're in third and short or fourth and goal or whatever, but do you think we'll see more Derek Watt this year?
I think it depends on what happens in the fourth quarter of some games, really.
Right.
Sure. Obviously.
What about early? Do you think you'll see some scripted stuff where you'll get Watt on the field as an intentional act?
I mean, some's more than obviously. With that hamstring injury last year, we didn't get to see a whole. It's hard to kind of compare to last year because of the injury that he went through, right? And,
that's true.
Getting on the moving train, yada yada. I mean, how much 21 or 22 personnel are we going to see? Short yards would be a good place, obviously, to start with it and do some things off of that. I think the biggest question, once again, and it all comes down to run game success. If you run successful early in games. And if you get a lead, odds are that you'll be given a chance to run successfully later in games. And what better way to bring a guy in like Derek Watt, later in games to help kind of put the finishing, stamp of whatever, here we are, try to stop it kind of run game attack there later in games. And I think if we do see Derek Watt play a considerably more amount of snaps in 2021, there's a good chance, some of them will come in the fourth quarter of games, hopefully late.
Yeah, that's what it comes down for me. I mean, the Steelers offense, this rushing game in particular, doesn't need to be top 5, even necessarily top 10 in football in yards per carry and rush yards and attempts. They probably won't be, in all honesty. It's about running well situationally, whether that's short yardage, where they've been the worst team in football in third, fourth, and short for the last 2 years, whether that's goal-to-go type stuff, whether that's 4-minute offense, where they were decent the first month of last season and absolutely tanked the rest of the way. So, can you have a good success rate and can you run well situationally? If you do those two things, essentially, I think, your runoff offense will be where it needs to be.
Was there one thing that Matt Canada said on Tuesday that made you swallow your Danny Smith gum?
My Danny Smith gum? No, I don't think so. It wasn't anything. I'll have to go. It was a lot of information to process today, so I'll have to kind of go back through it later tonight. But I don't know if there was one particular thing. I think the emphasis on matchups is obvious but important. Probably something we haven't seen enough from Steelers OCs, especially Randy Fichtner, through his Steelers tenure. But there was nothing that made me go, wow, that was new or unexpected.
I mean, every time there's a new offensive coordinator, we kind of go through this, right?
Right.
Put players in the best position to.
Has a coach ever said the opposite?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to put them in the worst position, and they're going to really hate me, guys.
Right. I mean, what do we really know at this point?
Yeah, that's why I prefer to go into the clinic tape and when the guys are actually coaching and the veil is kind of dropped of them being in front of the media. So, of course, we know some things and we expect a lot of pre-snap motion. I think that's very much a reasonable thing to expect and partially been reported upon. But I really can't wait to get into training camp, start seeing this stuff. And, of course, once preseason games begin, you got 4 games to watch Pittsburgh this year, charting this stuff. That's when I think we'll really get a fuller understanding of the Matt Canada-led offense.
Right. I mean, it all looks good in quotes right now, though. I mean, they're winning the offseason, I think. In the quote, look, I mean, spring. What's the quote? Optimism.
Hope springs eternal.
Yeah, that. I think that's where we're at right now. Kind of based on things that Canada has said. Really everything is said as. And look, I mean, it's the first day of mandatory minicamp. It's supposed to be kind of exciting time of year here, obviously. But we won't really get probably a better handle on this, or really until you start reporting, I think, from training camp.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the gentlemen start your engines moment of the race. Everyone's car looks shiny and it sounds good, and then once they get off that apron on the track, we'll see if they're in the wall or they're running ahead of the pack. We'll just have to wait and see.
Right. Plain and simple, they have to get the running game to be more successful in 2021. They need to try to limit the amount of times that Ben Roethlisberger drops back, the 40 times a game type situations there. So as the ability to run the football, successful run rates go, that's going to really, I think, play that and Roethlisberger's ability to push the football down the field a little bit further when he does have to throw are going to be two of the biggest factors here with the offense. And we really have known that since the end of last year, or obviously since the draft at least, or since I don't know how long, really since last season ended.
Mm-hmm. I know you've kind of touched on it, but just define the best as you can what to you a successful Steelers 2021 rushing attack looks like.
Man,
because successful can mean a lot of different things. Obviously, we want it to be there, but how would you define that? What is the goal?
Man, getting in 2nd and 6 or shorter for starters, right. As many times as possible, eliminating those ugly first down plays, whatever they may be, whether it be an RPO that's a quick slant that's dropped, or a run, an end around that goes for negative yardage, or a run that or that infamous screen game that gets you 2 yards. It obviously all starts on first down. They have to have, just plain and simple, a better success rate on first down, meaning 4 yards or more on 1st and 10 situations, however they want to go about getting it, because I think you really start opening up your opportunities when for an offensive coordinator and play calling and personnel groupings when you get into more of those 2nd and 6 or shorter scenarios there. That's first and foremost. As far as run success rates, man, you got a first-round draft pick in a running back, and arguably the best running back in this year's draft class. Man, I'm hoping for 53% run success rate out of a guy like Najee Harris. I really am, Alex. And I know the line, yada yada, but I mean, hopefully the talent of the player that you have back there will help you overcome some of the deficiencies that you might have on the offensive line there. So, it's kind of basic. It starts on first down, right? So, I mean, if you can stay out of those 2nd and 8 and 2nd and 10 type scenarios, and if you can have a successful run rate of 53%, I think that'll go a long way in helping Ben Roethlisberger and the rest of that offense. They have the weapons at the wide receiver position, I think, to be successful. And you just got to put the offense in better situations, and I think Roethlisberger has to do a better job of in certain scenarios pushing the football down the field.
Yeah, I think that success rate is going to be the key metric that I know you'll be paying really close attention to, and I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot game to game and just kind of quarter to quarter and a year in review. Just to kind of give you some numbers, I think I maybe mentioned this before, but the Steelers last year in runs of 20 plus yards, they had 10 of them. That was tied for 11th in football. Actually, pretty good number, surprising to see. Everything else, though, was crap. I mean, 10 plus yards, they had 32 runs. That was dead last. 5 plus yard runs, they had 101. That was dead last. And then in terms of negative runs, runs that lost yardage, they had 55. That was tied for the 25th most in football. So those latter three metrics, 10 plus yards, 5 plus yards, and negative runs have to change again. They don't need to be top 3 or top 5 or even probably top 10. But at least be average is kind of where I'm shooting for.
I would gladly sacrifice the 20-yard runs for more, 7, 8, 9, 10-yard runs.
Right. I don't know if you can scheme it that way, but in theory I would too.
Right. I mean,
because in theory, if you have a bunch of 10-plus-yard runs, some of those are going to turn into 20-plus-yard gains.
Right, and if not, boy, 10 yards will move. 10 yards should move the chains, right?
I hope so.
In most scenarios there. So, and look, I mean, the only it goes back to Najee Harris and the explosive run rate, and the explosive run rate being 20 yards. I mean, we don't expect. I think it's hard to expect, most kind of scat back type, to deliver a high rate of 20-yard runs. Najee obviously didn't have a high percentage of that coming out of Alabama, but he did have 21%, I think. And obviously you can't take what he did in Alabama and automatically rubber stamp it. But 21% 10-yard or more run rate at Alabama, obviously not bad at all. And I think it was second to only who was it? Javonte. I don't remember who he was behind there, but of the top running backs, he was right up there when it came to 10-yard runs or longer. Look, I mean, you're not going to lose a ball game if your running back carries the football and gains 5 yards every time he touches football, or you shouldn't unless you got a lot of penalties in there. But I mean, he did talk. He did put the emphasis on knowing that they have to run the football better, and that's not a secret. Overall, and I think that's going to be the main point thing that we track right out of the chute is how is the successful run rate for this offense in 2021, really starting in week 1 against Buffalo.
Right, and I don't expect Harris to have a league-leading number of 20-plus yards rushing because he didn't really do that at Alabama. But because you mentioned, I'm looking this up real time. Do you know who some of the top guys in 20-plus yard runs were last year? We're talking about how bigger backs might struggle there. Most of the bigger backs are leading the list. Derrick Henry has 16, number 1 in the league. Nick Chubb with 12. Gus Edwards had 8. Jonathan Taylor was 7. Dalvin Cook was 6. Kenyon Drake was 6. James Conner had 5 last year. James Robinson had 5 last year. So I think the bigger guys can do it as long as there's good first-level blocking, good second-level blocking, and that running back's creating once he hits the second and third level.
All right.
All right, Dave, let's talk about a little more from Najee Harris. Running backs coach Eddie Faulkner spoke with the media as well. Did confirm the story that Ben told that Faulkner had to send Najee Harris home one day so they could both get some sleep and some rest. And here's the quote from Faulkner on that, saying, "It is true, number one, and let me tell you why it's true, because I'm all for the hard work and the extra. I'm all here for that. I love it, but he also has to learn part of Najee and getting to know Najee in the draft process. He also has to learn how to give himself breaks. Too. He works his butt off, and sometimes it's a reward like, hey, man, go home, relax, watch TV, do something different than football." So trying to find that balance between work and life, is Faulkner trying to instill that early.
Rather say woe than sick 'em, as Mike Tomlin might say. So, look, I'm all for it. If he wants to, as immersed as he wants to be, as long as he doesn't hurt himself, that's fine. And it will be interesting to see, especially early, first portion of the season, of what kind of rotation they use and how that rotation winds up being. Is it going to be Benny Snell coming in every second or third series? How often will a guy like Anthony McFarland be able to get on the field? Those kind of things there. So you could have the mentality still of Najee being the bell cow, but within reason, I think.
Sure. Well, it depends how you define within reason, because if he's playing well, I mean, I don't think they're going to take him off the field too often if this run game's, where it needs to be.
Right. I mean, how many snaps are you talking about? Whoever comes on, are we talking about, giving him 15 snaps off a game period or what?
Right.
That'll be the most interesting to track. Or I mean, he's going to be your starting. He's going to be running back one right out of the chute. He's gonna hopefully touch the ball. I don't know, at least 20 times, if not more, if things are going right, going to touch the football a little bit more than that, right out of the chute there. So, just it is a 17-game season now, and I think there has to be some minor level of caution with him.
Sure. Yeah, you don't want to, literally run the wheels off of him in year number one. But for whatever it's worth, I think Harris has a little bit of a leg up because he's played for Alabama, and they're playing 13, 14-game seasons with these college football playoffs. So maybe that helps him a little bit, but still 17 games, plus 4 preseason games, 21 total, new territory for a guy like Najee Harris. Faulkner had some interesting comments on Anthony McFarland and Benny Snell, some optimism for both of those guys with McFarland. Faulkner said something that I've kind of pointed out, that I don't want to give up on McFarland because of a poor rookie year, and it was a poor rookie season, but there's some context there that's worth, I think, mentioning as well. He said, quote, "I think a lack of preseason did affect it," talking about McFarland's slow 2020 season. It affected him, and it affected us. It affected him in seeing live bullets and getting ready for week one. It affected us in the sense of finding out what he could do, not only in the running back phase of things, but special teams involvement. It's hard to figure out on the run when you're in the regular season. When you have a preseason, you can figure some of those things out, end quote. So McFarland, I think, being a redshirt sophomore last year and not having the preseason, things like that, and behind an offensive line that were poor run blockers, none of that helped him in year one. So I'm very excited to see him hopefully take that sophomore leap in year number 2.
And this is a guy that Matt Canada knows a little bit about, right? From the time at Maryland. I think the charge with Canada is to get the ball to McFarland out in space.
I think he can run between the tackles. We looked at his Maryland tape. He did a lot of damage.
Sure, but I think and you obviously have to do that occasionally to keep defenses honest there. But I think where the upside of McFarland is overall is he can deliver the big play for you in a hurry, especially if you get him out on the edge in motion at the snap. A lot of times you see him going back to that Maryland tape. I think McFarland's freshman season. Moving at the snap of the football. Out of the backfield and those kind of things. We saw the will. With him. Who was it against? Was it against Boston? No, not Boston College. I'm drawing a blank of.
I'm not going to remember.
Of the play against. It's in my Twitter feed somewhere there. But there should be opportunities to get McFarland the ball out in space and utilize some of that speed of his.
Well, let me ask you this, and I don't want to get into a super semantics debate, but do you view McFarland as a gadget player for this offense?
No, I did a complete breakdown to show that he could run and break tackles, running between the tackles. But I don't think that's the bulk of. His snaps are going to be minimized anyway.
Sure.
So
yeah, no,
you are occasionally, just to keep defenses honest, you're going to have to run some split zone and some power with them back there. But on the flip side, I think the charge should be at least a couple of times a game, try to get the football out to him out in space.
Do you mean that in terms of like the horizontal passing game or outside zone, or how do you think he effectively should get the ball in space?
Just you're running, maybe running some outside zone with him. Just get him on the move outside the tackles where he can one cut and go maybe.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you certainly want to utilize that speed, and I think overall you'll see McLeod as the more gadget type of guy, the jet plays and the swing routes and stuff like that. It's probably a little more natural to him than it is for McFarland. But yeah, you want to utilize McFarland's hopeful game breaking ability, and you do that in space a little bit. I think that certainly has value.
Where are you on the running back depth chart right now?
Obviously Harris number 1. I have McFarland number 2. Behind that, I think it'll be rotation. They'll have to feel that stuff out. Who's going to take the leap? Will McFarland do it? Will Snell take another jump forward? We'll have to see. But to give you the answer, I think I mentioned this on a previous episode recently, was Harris, McFarland, Snell, and then Balaj.
Okay, so you think 4, and then 4, and then what?
and then Derek White as your fullback.
All right.
But I don't want Derek White carrying the football.
Oh, you don't want that dive? All right.
Yes. And then the second dive.
All right.
Yeah. PTSD there. Anything else from Eddie Faulkner that we should touch on? I think that was probably a good wrap up on him.
All right.
A lot of new drills. I liked his approach to drill. It's been highlighted during OTAs. Just every day, it's like there's a new drill and kind of skill set that he's emphasizing with. So I like that as a good coaching quality. Mike Sullivan, the new Steelers quarterback coach, also spoke with the media talking about Ben and Haskins and Rudolph. And again, more praise for Haskins, saying he loves his focus and his discipline and doesn't care about what happened in Washington that caused things to go sideways there. Just happy that he's working hard and doing all the right things here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and he said, look, he does have there is great velocity on his football. We know that. We've known that for quite a while. That's not the issue with him. I did like him saying that he does have a good arm talent, and we're trying to make sure we're doing with him and with all the guys is trying to make sure that from the bottom up we have the balanced platform and we're able to transfer our weight and get the most out of every throw. The arm talent, strength, is never been the issue with Dwayne Haskins. It's one of the things that just jumps off the tape. I mean, not whether it be his Ohio State tape or his tape with Washington. That guy can flick the wrist and that ball, but that ball goes. And the problem is obviously the accuracy the further that he gets downfield with it. I mean, it was something like, I don't know, 13-17% on connecting on throws of more than 15 yards down the field. I mean, just really, really miserable deep ball stats to date here. It just sounds like they're trying to tweak just basic mechanics with him. He talked about Mason's footwork, I think, improving. I think that was one of the quotes that he had as well too. And I think you put it perfectly in your terrible take. I don't know, maybe it's about a week ago now, that now's when the fun starts with guys like Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins and really all the quarterbacks. They've been throwing on air up until now. You can it all looks good up until now. How do these guys do on the 7-7 stuff? 11 on 11. I think one of the toughest things on Haskins might actually be, he's the new guy on the block when it comes into to learning this offense and the terminology. Yeah, he's on the same level of probably having to learn the terminology and stuff like that, but the basics, he's obviously going to be behind guys like Roethlisberger, Rudolph, and even Joshua Dobbs. They're all going to have the leg up on him. So the whole processing aspect of learning the offense and everything that goes along with it, along with being tasked with refining the mechanics, not easy on a first-year quarterback coming in, to a new team, no matter what the draft pedigree is.
Sure, because Ben and Dobbs and Rudolph all had that relationship started with Canada last year, and so this is square one for Dwayne Haskins. You can build that relationship for sure, but there is a step behind he is relative to those other guys. But yeah, I think obviously the battle between Haskins and Dobbs will be one of those things we'll be watching in training camp, and it may just come down to accuracy, because these guys have been super accurate in their NFL careers. Haskins completed about 60% of his passes in the NFL. Dobbs has had some of the worst completion percentages in training camps for the last 3 years now. 53% of his passes completed in 2019. I don't know what it was last year, but probably wasn't a whole lot better. So who's going to be the more accurate quarterback? Maybe the guy who wins that job.
We're just a blog, but you'll be charting that, right?
Yeah, and again,
that meaningless stuff.
And I don't like to be beholden to it because it is training camp stats, but I think whenever you can track it in the totality, to use your word, Dave, about the whole training camp, and then compare that to other quarterbacks and compare that to quarterbacks from 5 years ago, and you kind of have a whole list built up of, okay, what does this number mean in the context of it? And we're not going to say that Dobbs sucks or Haskins sucks because their completion percentages isn't 65%, but that'll be just one key and one metric we'll look at. And maybe Dobbs completes 63% of his passes this training camp. And so we can say, okay, we're seeing big improvements there, at least appear to be seeing big improvements there. So it's just one, I think, tool in our tool belt, but it's something we'd like to do. And certainly if they're at camp, we're going to be charting that stuff.
I mean, let's see, we are 6.5, right at roughly 6.5 weeks away from the preseason opener Hall of Fame game against the Cowboys. I mean, and then obviously camp will be underway, a little more than a month, right?
projected date's the 22nd, not set in stone, but that is the expectation.
All right. So, and look, I mean, that opener against the Cowboys, I mean, we should see quite a bit of Haskins and Dobbs in that contest, you would think, right?
Yeah. I mean, would you see Ben at all in that game? Maybe a series, but that's at most, probably not at all. And then probably Rudolph for the first quarter, and then one guy will get the second quarter, or half of the rest of the game, and the guy gets the other half. I mean, then we'll see how they divvy it up. But yeah, we should see those guys quite a bit. I
think the biggest thing that I'm at least looking for with Haskins right out of the chute will be the accuracy and the grasping of the offense and decision making, those kind of things that you always look for early in those preseason. But I mean, look, he has experience. How many guys playing in a quarterbacks playing in a preseason game will kind of have the experience that he has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I'll be looking at his overall ability to throw those rack throws, those run after catch opportunities. Is he being accurate but leading the receiver so he can create opportunities and yards after the catch, and then just processing against zone coverage? I think he struggled a lot more against zone and reading and not having that tunnel vision sometimes. He's had, I think, the vast majority of his 14 career interceptions have been against zone and not man. So how do you process zone, and can you have those rack throws? To me, are the two biggest things I'll be watching Haskins in camp and in preseason.
All right, what else from Sully? Can we call him Sully?
I guess the Penguins coach gets called Sully too, so I don't really know if that differentiates to them too well. I think that was kind of about it. Again, praised Rudolph. He just praised all the quarterbacks except Dobbs. No one asked him about Josh Dobbs, but poor Dobbs. But I mean, he just said everyone's doing well. And again, environment right now where they should be looking good and playing well, and 7-on-7. I think they're finally doing team drills through this 3-day mini camp. But again, no contact, stuff like that. Quarterbacks can't get hit. They won't get hit until the preseason. So that probably puts your mind at ease as a thrower a little bit. So I think it is tough to judge those guys from where we're sitting at very, very far away right now.
All right, Keith Butler probably had the most interesting comments when it came to coaches of the day, huh?
Yeah, Keith Butler talking about the edge position and who's going to be that next man up at outside linebacker, that third guy, and continues to talk about Cassius Marsh as potentially being the number 3 outside linebacker on this team right now. And let me pull up the quote here that he says. He says, quote, "But we're looking for a third guy right now who's going to step up, and hopefully Cassius can give us a little help there too. So we'll see. We drafted the one guy, and we think he's going to be all right." Of course, referring to 6th-round pick Quincy Roche. And so, yeah, we kind of talk about this topic quite a bit. It's Roche, it's Marsh, and it's the field in terms of potential trade options. You have the eagle eye on Chase Winovich. I'm sure you want to talk about that. Maybe some issue over there in New England.
I mean, I don't know for sure. Just and I really haven't followed up to see if he's back in. I don't think he was there the other day for one of their mini camp sessions. I don't know if there's smoke or fire or what have you. But I mean, that's obviously a guy that I talked about months ago. What would it cost to get him? Do the Steelers even have that after dealing away some of these picks? Are you talking about a 4th or 5th round pick? The Steelers, obviously have dealt some of those, 4th and a 5th away, and I don't know what all is going to transpire there. But if indeed a guy like Chase Winovich can be had, I think you have to explore every opportunity to maybe go after him. So I don't know if he's on the market. Like I said, what it would take to get him. I think that don't the Patriots have like a 3rd round in him?
Yeah, it was a 3rd or 4th round pick. Yeah.
I mean, you would think it'd probably take a 4th or a 5th, and what do the Steelers have in the way of 4th and 5ths next year?
Yeah, they don't currently.
Right. So I don't know how creative you would have to be, and I don't even know if you could pull it off. And once again, I don't even know if he if he's for sale, so to speak, there. But Alex, hold me, because I mean, look, all apologies to Cassius Marsh, good special teams player, but make no mistake about it, this is a guy that technically kind of has, I think, 1 foot out of the league at this point. He can help you on special teams, but is he a guy that you want in there, as your third out, the guy to come off the bench to give T.J. Watt or Alex Highsmith, a breather for 10 to 15 snaps a game? Man, from what I've seen, not only just in his limited exposure with the Steelers last year, but before that, I'm not in that category there. And it'd be nice that if Quincy Roche would take a huge giant step forward and give you some comfortability there, but it's probably going to take a little bit of time with him as well too. And we know this team has already kind of gone out and at least explored the Ryan Kerrigan thing, right?
Right. Yeah,
So,
no, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
You just think that, and I think in so many words, I think Keith Butler was kind of asked that later during his press conference there. Talked about outside linebackers. Let's see, where was it here that he was asked about the depth in Colbert, and he says, one more thing about the outside linebackers. Are you potentially going to go out looking for somebody, or is that something that you would probably hold off until training camp is pretty much done with, so you know what you've got with the guys that you have here? He says that's going to be up to Mike and Kevin to look elsewhere and stuff like that to give us a little depth right there. So we'll see as we go along during training camp and the preseason. We got the 4 preseason games, playing in the Hall of Fame game and all that stuff. The good thing about all that is it gives you a chance to evaluate who you have and who we don't have. Hopefully we can find somebody that we think is capable of being good as we have been in the past. So we'll see what happens there. And if we need somebody else, I'm sure Kevin and Mike will look around. Please look around.
Yeah, therein lies the problem you said earlier. You said that Marsh has 1 foot out of the league. The other foot's the number 3 Steelers outside linebacker right now. That's where both his feet are landing. Now, I'll play a little devil's advocate and say that I think there are 2 things to consider with Marsh. Is that, A, he came over late last year, and that had to be tough with COVID and trying to pick up the playbook really late in the season. He had a COVID issue himself, and so a lot going on there that's probably tough to do. So a full off season for him certainly can't hurt. And then B, I was going through all of his run snaps last year with Pittsburgh, and I didn't find a lot of good, but it wasn't actually quite as bad as I thought it was going to be when I went through those snaps all together all at once. It certainly was not great, but I don't think it was quite as bad as I thought in my head whenever I was going through last season in real time.
I think they can do better, though.
Oh, yeah. There's no question about that. And I think he's still going to struggle against the run because he's just a pretty lanky guy that doesn't have a ton of upper body strength. He's been a pass rusher kind of where he's been in his career. But, I'm all for finding an upgrade. But to Butler's point, and this Steelers' typical MO is to do this, is you go into camp, evaluate your guys, and then make moves from there if the guys aren't playing well enough.
And this dates back, kind of what you and I have said kind of all off season. I've had a terrible take or two kind of dedicated to it. There's an outside linebacker somewhere right now, not on the Steelers roster, that I think opens up week 1 on the Steelers 53-man roster. I'll leave. I don't know who that person is. I obviously have talked a lot about Chase Winovich, but once again, I don't know if he's available. I don't know. You just, unfortunately, I don't have that Madden button that I can just push and make the deal happen. But I don't think anybody should be shocked if this team at some point, might not happen in the month of June, but it very well could happen in July and obviously August, and maybe even final cut downs. I think and it's not a slight against Quincy Roche as well, too. I think you're just asking a lot for a guy like him to come in and be that number 3 guy right out of the chute. Maybe as the season goes on, he can be that guy, and maybe even regardless of who you go out and get. Maybe there, some mix and match of Cassius Marsh and whoever that guy is there. But I think deep down the side, just kind of, trying to read in between the lines, I think that they know that they're not good enough depth-wise there at the outside linebacker position.
Yeah, it's certainly an area of concern, and one I'm sure they'll be watching really closely, their pro personnel department, Brandon Hunt, others, trying to see who could be available come August and early September. Winovich apparently not at Patriots practice today. Belichick was asked about him, said that he was there for part of OTAs, and praised his level of energy, technique, and kick coverage ability. But Chase Winovich, it could be excused, it could be COVID related. I have no idea. But Winovich not there for practice on Monday or Tuesday.
That's not great.
No,
it could be numerous reasons, all legitimate, and there might not be any smoke or fire there. But I don't know, just kind of what I've kind of been able to gather just from reading what and listening to what I have a feeling that he's not long for there. Just a gut feeling.
Yeah, it could be right. We shall see. So anything else that the coaches said, whether that's Butler or Faulkner or Sullivan, all the guys who talked today, anything else you wanted to get to?
What would you trade for him? Would you trade a third for him?
No, I wouldn't trade a third. That's the issue, and that's one reason why I didn't like the Loudermilk trade, because you already had the fifth that was gone from the Avery Williamson deal, and you trade the fourth in 2022 for Loudermilk. So if you want to make that kind of, generally when Colbert does these trades, it's like a fifth round pick, sometimes sixth or seventh, but you're more limited in making that August type of deal that Colbert likes to do, and so that's going to, I think, put you in a bind because you have comp picks coming, but you can't trade those yet. They don't technically exist, so I think it kind of puts you in a tough spot. I mean,
there's got to be what do you view a guy, and we're in fantasy land now. We ought to stay out of this area, but what would you view a guy like Winovich as being worth?
Yeah, I did not answer your question at all, so I apologize. I mean, I would probably trade like a 6th-round pick for the guy.
Okay, and that's it, right? I mean, do you think there's another team out there willing to give up maybe more than that?
Probably not. And if they start entertaining,
he had like 5. He's had like 5 sacks. I mean, not that you can scout a guy just off his sack numbers, but I think he has 10 NFL sacks to date, right? 5.
Is it that many?
I think it's 5 in each season, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong.
I believe you. I mean, I just had no idea. I hadn't even really thought about it. Let's see. Yeah, 11 career sacks, 5.5 in each season. So, I mean, maybe it's worth a little bit more than that, I guess. He'll be 26 years old and on his rookie deal. But if they're going to entertain trading him, that probably means they're entertaining cutting him. And so you don't want to start bidding up too much because you might get him on waivers.
Right.
But maybe not, because your waiver order might not be high enough. Who knows?
Is there anybody else out there on the free agent wise, not current? I mean, if they're worth anything at this point and unsigned, you would think they Steelers might already have them in. So it would probably be somebody on somebody else's roster. Probably.
Yeah, well, I talked up Trent Murphy. He's still out there. But Tom Mead had an article about 10 days ago that had 7 edge rushers. I'll kind of just go through some of the names here. Daryl Johnson of the Bills. Ben Bandigu from the Colts makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
you mentioned
they
him.
liked him, I think. Didn't they?
Yeah,
didn't they
brought him in.
Yeah, they brought him in. Yeah.
Yeah, Bradley and I from the Cowboys, who didn't really play much last year despite them needing pass rush help. Joe Osman from the Eagles. Stephen Means from Atlanta. Noah Spence from New Orleans, former pedigree guy. I think 2nd-round pick, I believe. And Kylie Fitz from Arizona, a name I'm not too familiar with.
All right, that's all the coaches. What about players?
Yeah, let's see. I'm losing track of who spoke today.
TJ Watt.
Yeah.
Edmonds. Who else?
Yeah, Edmonds had said that Mike Tomlin had personally called him to let him know they were not picking up his 5th-year option, said the door is not closed on him returning in the future, but obviously now suddenly a contract year for Terrell Edmonds, and that's going to be his approach to the season.
Yeah, and I think he said all the right things there, obviously. And, here's the thing. That's one of those things that we'll cross that bridge when we get later into the 2021 season. And you and I have already had a few conversations about, I mean, if he plays lights out, then he's going to increase his market value. Then you're not going to be able to retain him that way. I think it all boils down to the long and short of it is they didn't think he was worth $6 million to pick up his 5th-year option, and that's where we're at. My gut tells me that if he does return to the Steelers in 2022, it would be on a uber cheap deal. Yeah,
how cheap is uber cheap?
I mean, I'm talking about, I don't know, $2.5 million, something like that.
Yeah, what's his base salary this year in the final year of his rookie deal? It's going to be around there, a little bit more.
What is his? I'll have to look.
I don't know if he would come back. I don't know if he'd come back for less than his base salary this year. He's going to be your full 17-game starter. So whatever that is might be the floor I would put at it. But of course, as you said, it depends on how he plays.
His base this year is 1.938789, and only 756,000 of that is guaranteed.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, not picking up that option doesn't generally bode well for players having a long-term future with the team that drafted him. But we'll see how he plays this year and see where things go after the season.
He wouldn't spill the beans about anything about change up or scheme, and as far as the defense, he subscribes, I think, to the Minka Fitzpatrick standpoint of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But didn't really. I don't think he really revealed too much of anything that we might see him different this year.
Speaking of not spilling the beans in contracts, TJ Watt asked about his contract situation, did not take the bait, saying he respectfully did not want to discuss any updates or news on his contract status. I doubt there are too many updates to share at this moment.
Yeah, you're not going to hear too. That's going to be the path he takes any time that he's asked about it until it actually does happen, and you got to respect him on. A lot of that is out of his hands anyway. That's why he has an agent negotiating that kind of stuff. And
who is his agent? We know who Watt's agency or representation is.
I'll have to look that up. I don't have it off the tip of my tongue.
Speaking of which, Juju just changed agents. He was clearly not happy with how the 2021 offseason went for his wallet.
Yeah, I put out on Twitter earlier in the offseason that it was going to be a big offseason for his for Rock Nation. CAA Sports is TJ Watt. Is who represents him. Just saying that based on kind of the free agents that Rock Nation had this past offseason, that really what happens with Juju this past offseason might really kind of set the stage as far as whether the kind of clients that they get moving forward there. And obviously things didn't go perfect for Juju, and I'm not overly surprised that he switched agents, to be honest with you. I know he's frustrated as can be right now. So Wasserman, I think, is who's representing him now, and he has left Rock Nation. I think Rock Nation might have lost a couple this offseason as well too. So that just sideline news there, not really significant overall, right. But I mean, probably not shocking that Juju did change representation.
Yeah. Even less significant news, you could apparently book TJ Watt for a speaker's fee to come in and speak to your corporate appearance, speaking engagements, and endorsements only. And they have a picture of him with his Wisconsin-looking bio and baby face thing going on. So should we book TJ Watt for a speaker appearance on the Terrible Podcast?
We probably couldn't afford that. Probably not with our current budget right now.
I wonder what he costs, but I'm not going to find out. Anyway, all right. TJ Watt talking about Alex Highsmith, saying high hopes for him and what he can do and step up to be the guy opposite of him in 2021.
Yeah, just talking how look, if the protection slid over to Watt's side, and he expects Alex Highsmith to be up for the challenge to take care of his business on the other side. It's going to be one of these things that we'll see as we go, right? Look, I thought it was interesting. He talked about the certain moves and that TJ did a good job of perfecting his pass moves. He even mentioned the ghost move by name, and that's one of the things I think that you broke down a couple of times last season with Alex Highsmith, one of the several kind of go-to moves. And look, we've talked about Alex quite a bit, throughout, obviously through the end of last season and on into this offseason there, the ways he's got to get better here. And, I think he's got a nice core of pass rush moves, just kind of improve on the counters from there. I'd like to see him do a little bit more with some speed to power type stuff there. And obviously I think he's got to get stronger and improve against the run, one of the main things that he's tasked with. But overall, and in so many words, I think Mike Tomlin said as well too, that expect, we've seen enough so far that it should be expected that he makes a nice jump in year number 2. And what that jump is as far as stat totals, I mean, it all goes down to quality sacks. I mean, you could have 15 sacks if you want, but or 6 of them chasing a quarterback out of bounds 5 seconds after the play, or
he gets 15 of those. I don't care what they look like.
Yeah,
quality or not.
Absolutely. It means somebody's doing their job up front, right? But you just looking for the entire package to come together, and I think just looking at Alex Highsmith totality, had a few issues against the run, had a few issues maybe getting caught peeking inside and maybe not staying patient like he should be. But as far as a pure pass rusher goes, he's talked about his get off this offseason and how he wants to get that a little bit better. I think as we mentioned there, the speed to power type thing. I mean, there's a lot to like about what he offered this team as far as the pass rusher goes. Now you just want to see him refine a lot of those things, and there's going to be plenty of situations where I think that the protection, and look, to keep Butler's credit, he does a great job, I think, of scheming certain matchups there. So there ought to be certain situations throughout the season where Alex Highsmith gets his wish. He gets a one-on-one on a tackle in certain situations, and it's imperative that he wins a nice, a pretty decent chunk of those.
Yeah, he should see that a lot. I'm actually doing a study on Highsmith. I started doing the compiling the data last night, watching all of his third down pass rushes last year to see where he won the most and where he won the least. If you had to guess what move was he most successful with last season, and it's a small sample size. It's like 47 total snaps here, so it's a pretty small sample size. But I'll give you the rushes that he used, and then you can pick which one you think he won the most and the least with. He used a cross drop. There were stunts, which is not really a move, but I still count it. So stunts where he was crashing to the inside. The club, the bull, the swim, the dip/ghost, spin, and rip. Where do you think he won the most last season?
Yeah.
You name them off again. I know I rattled off a lot of information there.
I don't know. The chop?
No, chop was 20%. He used the chop early and then stopped using it the rest of the season because I don't think it was working. It was just 4 times, but the spin. He won 3 of his 4 spins. Yeah, were successful.
One of those obviously
season.
Was against the Colts.
Yeah, and the other 2 I think came against Wills and the Browns late in the season. Kind of. He was winning effectively when he went to the inside. The inside swim and club and spin and those kind of things. Or was he winning the most? He won 75% on the spin. He won 66.7% on the club, but that was just 2 or 3 against small sample size thing. Where do you think he won the least? There were 2 moves where he didn't really win at all with them last year.
I mean, probably power of some sort, right?
Yeah. Rip, 0 for 3 on the rip, and then bull, just 1 of 13.
Right. Okay.
So,
look, I think as he learns, the tape study and starts learning some of these other tackles and gets a little bit deeper and all. I mean, he's got a nice, I think, core at least of initial move. And what is it that Kevin Green and said? Really, you just need 1 good move, maybe 2, and then just build counters off of those things. I think he's got a lot of initial moves there. I do think that regardless, he's going to need that speed to power at some point.
He needs to get stronger, and he says he added 3 pounds of good muscle, so hopefully it accomplishes that task. So anything else from Watt or Edmonds that we wanted to note?
No, I think that's got most of it, right? Especially with Watt there.
I do want to mention some of the stuff that we posted before the wave of interviews today. That is study on Pat Freiermuth and rookie tight ends and what kind of impact they could make in year number 1. And what I found was I went back the last decade, so 2010 to 2020 of tight ends drafted on day 2, so rounds 2 and 3. What was their average production in year number 1? And the average production for those tight ends, excluding some guys that missed their entire rookie season with injury and stuff like that. But the average stat line was 21 receptions for 250 yards and about 2 touchdowns, which actually sounds like a pretty realistic line to put on Freiermuth in all 3 of those categories in year 1: 21, 250, and 2.
Huh. Okay.
So that's kind of where I'm at. And you actually see a really big jump in production for their sophomore season. Their production really skyrockets. It goes 78% higher in receptions in year 2, 79% in yards in year 2, and 67% in touchdowns in year 2. So I think you could really see him. And obviously with Ebron being a free agent, I think year 2 is probably where you see Freiermuth make the big production impact in terms of being a receiver. So just wanted to kind of give that context and study and see, is there really a big learning curve for tight ends? And the data that I pulled at least seems to indicate so.
All right. Going to be definitely interesting to see once again the amount of usage and how, when, where, and what with Freiermuth there for sure. And I think the ceiling with him, as I said, is around 500 snaps. Obviously barring injury and all like that, but probably realistically that snap totals, I don't know, 300 to 400, I guess, right around in there.
I think 400 to 500 is probably in line for him. I think that's fair.
All right.
Last thing I have here, Dave, and I don't like to get too wrapped up in this stuff because the dude hasn't signed, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here. But Malik Hooker was doing a Q&A thing last night. He says he's about over 90% healthy on that Achilles. He says he will sign after his daughter is born, and his favorite Steeler of all time is Troy. So There's some useless information, but it says His daughter, I think, is due soon, so hopefully he'll sign probably within the next 3 weeks.
You stemming from that serious interview that he did, it sounds like it's gonna, he talked about potentially making second trips to teams he's already visited with. Obviously, the Steelers was one of those teams that he's. Do we know the list of teams that he had? It was the Cowboys, the Steelers.
The Dolphins was the third.
Okay,
third.
All right.
Yeah, so that is the Malik Hooker update. Dave, anything else you wanted to discuss, whether that's from today's slate of interviews or something else that you researched? Again, great work on the Juju slot study stuff. So I thought some really interesting numbers there, just in terms of how little they used them down the field in the slot last season.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that sticks out there is that Chase Claypool can play in the slot, and really all of them can. All of them have numbers in there. It's just that it was just such a high percentage of targets for Juju out of the slot in there. Look, and it goes back to, once again, look, we understand why Juju said. I just think he could have phrased it all better is all, there, because you look at his numbers outside. I think his average depth of target was even lower on the target, much lower on targets outside. In fact, I don't know I don't have the numbers in front of me. Something like 10 of them were like wide receiver screens, I think. On the catches that he had on the outside there. So long and short of it, I think what Juju's trying to say, and what he should have probably said, and I said this the other day, was that he should have voiced that, man, I'm looking to potentially being targeted down the field more in 2021. I don't care how it happens, whether it be in the slot or whether it be outside. I'm all for playing more on the outside if they'll let me. I just think that would have been, and I agree with him. Look, I think you got to target this guy down the field more. Poor guy, when you look at his average depth of catch and then what his average yards per catch was, thank God he got the yards after the catch that he had last season. Because if not, well, you want to talk about some even more pitiful numbers than average yard per reception than what he had. I still have ever thinking, like I said earlier in this show too, I think Matt Canada, I think everybody knows he's the best guy to play in the slot, but it doesn't mean that you can't switch those guys around some more, obviously a lot more than what you did last year, and put guys like Claypool in the slot. Occasionally put a guy like Deontay Johnson maybe in the slot. Heck, Ray McLeod, a couple snaps in the slot there as well too. And it's just going to be interesting just to I think kind of track that. Tom Mead obviously does our offensive charting, does a fine job of that. It'd be fun to track that as the season goes along as well too. So I don't fault him for what he said, just more than anything, how he kind of conveyed his message there, I think.
Or even having Ebron in the slot with Freiermuth as your inline tight end and Juju out wide. That could be another wrinkle to this offense we could see. And again, to me, I want Juju to play in the slot a lot because that's where he's best. That's where he fits the best. The other guys are better fits on the outside. But I just don't want to have this thought of, okay, he's in the slot, so he has to catch, or average 8.5 yards per catch. I mean, he played in the slot a lot earlier in his career. He was averaging 12, 13, 14 yards per catch. So I have an article either tomorrow or on Thursday that kind of highlights 2 routes the Steelers have used with Juju with success down the field. They got to get back to using him in 2021.
Well, one's got to be on the over, right?
One is the over route. Yeah.
Well, the other one got to be the slot fade.
The other is the slot fade. All right. How many cameo articles that is?
What do I win? Tell Dave what he's won.
A new article idea for me tomorrow because I think that one doesn't work.
I mean, and I'm probably not the only one yelling at my podcast machine that one, but I mean, I think you got to mix those in.
And they did it in 2018. It was the year I looked at because it's where he had his best season. I mean, he did that a ton and with great success.
And look, I don't have to be a junior offensive coordinator to learn. You watch enough tape and over the time and how he has won, and you can definitely. And look, one of the wins that Chase Claypool had technically, and I shared that with you yesterday via direct messages too, and shows how you can kind of mix and match these guys around there. In fact, the longest air yard reception that Juju had down the field last year was, I believe, the over route out of the slot, and this is all out of the slot, I mean, was the over route against the Colts for a touchdown. That was 32, 33 air yards, 35-yard, 36-yard touchdown, something along those lines there. And I think it was the third longest air yard completion that Chase Claypool had out of the slot was that slot fade in week 6 down the left-hand side against the Cleveland Browns. So how many times did I post on Twitter, run the slot fade? I think you have multiple guys in that offense, Claypool, Juju, Deontay, Washington, probably even McLeod can run it if you ask him to. So that's another thing that I think got maybe a route concept that didn't get utilized enough last year.
Yeah, I didn't want to spoil my entire study in the points.
I'm sorry.
No. But I'm going to bring up. But this came from your study, is that he caught 5 over routes from the slot last year. 3 went for touchdowns. He averaged 15.6 yards per catch on those receptions, but it was only targeted 5 times. How do you not use him more, especially outside the 20 on a route that was so effective? It beats man, it beats zone. He runs it well. Why was he not used more on those kind of? And I think he only had 1 catch from or 1 target from a fade slot, or slot fade, I should say, last year. So why was he not used on those more when he's clearly been successful when targeted?
Right, and I mean, we've seen him make plays that contested catches down the field. You go back to New England a couple years ago. Was that 2018? And then obviously Jacksonville had a nice catch down the left-hand side. So I mean, this guy. Look, do you want to make it a habit of him being your down the field guy? Probably not. I mean, you got guys that can do that all. I mean, but you have to mix him in more down the field. And I think that's just the gist of what you're going or saying now, what you're studying all is going to show. I look forward to reading that.
Yeah, that'll be up again tomorrow or on Thursday. All right, Dave, anything else to talk about, or do you want to get to some reader emails and close out today's show?
Let's see. We'll start one with and thank you for everybody. So many replies in here that I didn't properly comb through them to pull the questions out. So many people replied to how they listen and to get the feedback. So I'll pull one out and look. This podcast is already late enough as it is. It's going to be late going up, so we'll cut this short here. Rich Hudd writes in, guys, can it be the fan base and ourselves included are being too rough on Mason Rudolph? He has grown every year, and people leaking things from camp say he's clearly the second in command there behind Ben. A lot of people forget Ben before he was making Hall of Fame throws. He just a big kid shrugging off defenders long enough to throw wide open receivers, and had the best defense in the league for most of his starts, as well as Hall of Fame running back. Thanks for everything you do. I guess he's saying is fan base ourselves being too rough on Mason Rudolph. I don't think we personally have, been too rough on Rudolph. I mean, we talked the other day about, huh?
I've been pretty rough on Rudolph.
All right, you've been rough on Rudolph. I mean, I've admitted that he, last season or 2019 was a big opportunity for him to show certain things, and really, he did play well. I thought against Cleveland, he could have played better against Cleveland. Obviously, in several areas in that week 17 game. I just think the guy coming in after Ben's always going to have the hardest thing, especially if he doesn't, the way things transpired with Mason, with those wheels coming off as like they did. What was it, that week? I don't know, 6-7 game against Cincinnati early in the second half there, and then you have a guy like Duck coming in and made it almost forced the coaching staff's hands to stick with Devlin Hodges there, and then the opportunity that he gets to come back, he had the opportunity later in the season against
Jets, right?
The Jets. He comes back in, starts showing a little bit of life there, and he goes down injured there. And I always kind of wonder what might have happened had Rudolph had a better complement of receivers in that earlier in the game that got that Myles Garrett put a dent in his head in how things might have gone. The space-time continuum had a couple of those wide receivers, made a couple of catches down the field in that game. How maybe that would have changed stuff, because obviously I think the game after that was a Cincinnati game, and the wheels came off, and then we didn't see him again until the Jets game, and looked like there was a little something there, and then he gets hurt, and then we can try to get deeper into this and why the fan base thinks this or thinks that and being too rough on. And until Mason leads this team to a couple of games and plays, lights out, it's going to be hard for him to win over the fan base, plain and simple. And what's going to happen? Not only in 2021, I mean, obviously everybody's hoping that we don't have to see Mason play any really meaningful snaps at all. And whatever meaningless playing time that he might get, then you hope he plays lights out. And, but as at least what I think right now, and there's no reason for me to think otherwise, it could happen. But from where I sit right now, he's more than likely going to be your week 1 2022 starting quarterback. Now, obviously, things change in a hurry, and no way would I bet the house on that. But from where I sit right now, that's the bet that I would make. And then where it goes from, if indeed that's the case, he does end up being your week 1 2022 starter for whatever reason, then how he plays obviously will dictate how long he keeps that spot.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly had a difficult and roller coaster ride so far, especially in that 2019 season. And I don't think he sucks. I think he's improved, and that's been good to see. I think he's a fine backup in this league right now. But to the core question of, are we being too harsh and too rough on Rudolph? And I'll say this, is that sometimes I think we as fans and analysts will ride this roller coaster wave, especially with rookie quarterbacks and first round guys. Okay, one week he's great, so he's the savior. Next week he sucks, and so he's bust. He's terrible. We kind of get up and down too much and want to take a step back and watch a season unfold. But with Rudolph, I mean, we're in what, year number 4 for him right now, entering year number 4. And I would just say that for quarterbacks in general, no position has more of a weight or higher expectations at their position than the quarterback. You have to be rough and critical and really see if this guy can be the guy, because the standard has to be set so high, because if you're not a franchise type guy, your franchise is not going to go very far. So I think you have to set the highest standard for quarterbacks, and that probably brings more criticism than other positions, just because quarterback is the least forgiving position in maybe all of sports.
All right, David writes in, says, David Paul, Chicago, Illinois. Do you see the Steelers trying to sign a vet running back as a backup plan to Najee, a la the D'Angelo Williams signing of 2015? They're redesigning their offense to rely heavily on a three down back workhorse, and they only have one on the roster, with the current backup plan being the same running back room they deemed so awful that they had to draft Najee in the first place. We don't want to see a replay of 2014, he writes. At this point, barring injury, man, David, I would be surprised if they bring in, a vet at this point right now. I mean, they signed, Balaj, and, you've got obviously Benny Snell, who they drafted. You have Anthony McFarland, who they drafted. You still have Jalen Samuels on the roster for now. I mean, barring an injury or two, I would be surprised to see them bring in a vet running back that could potentially give you reason to believe that he could make the roster.
Yeah, I mean, to the question, what free agent back is the 3-down running back that you're sitting on the street right now? I'm not really sure if there is one out there. So maybe someone that has some more versatility. But, I mean, if Harris goes down, it's a committee no matter who you sign. So
I guess everybody would point towards Adrian Peterson, would probably people yelling. But, I mean,
it's not a 3-down back. He's not a 3rd-down guy.
I would just, but I think that's what people would have in their head when you ask that question.
Right. Well, Le'Veon Bell's out there. He's not going back to Kansas City. We know that. So,
boy, could that guy have, man, sometimes it just, a lesson I can learn at times too. Just shut your mouth, Yeah,
he tried the age-old trick of tweeting through it, which is not a good idea. It didn't work well.
All right. I think we covered a lot. How far are we into this thing now?
Hour and 20 minutes.
All right, let's wrap it up there. You and I we'll have plenty, I'm sure, to talk about with on Friday, because there'll be a couple more days worth of interviews and practice to talk about on top of it there. So until Friday, you can follow me on the Twitter machine at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. You can follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, please go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button for $25 for 1 calendar year. You can have a ad-free version of the site. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Listenership has been off the charts. We appreciate everybody for listening to the podcast, listening to the Terrible Takes, and reading the site at SteelersDepot.com as well, too. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.